Hi, I'm really privileged today to introduce to you Alexander Noel. He is a he is a private, excuse me, he is a pre-licensed counselor at Macon Wellness with a focus on supporting individuals with ASD, ADHD, anxiety, and depression. He's dedicated to providing care and strategies that empower clients to regain control of their lives and achieve lasting well being. Congratulations, Alex, for the publishing of your interview on Authority Magazine titled Five Effective Strategies for Mental Well Being. And thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about the opportunity.
Hey, it's my privilege. Were there any events or hints in your childhood that pointed to your interest in becoming a counselor?
I got to give some credit to my AP Psych teacher at the end of high school for sure. Really made the class very interesting. The whole idea of psychology was very interesting with how she presented it. And it kind of just sparked my interest in, going on to pursue that in undergrad. Did well enough, liked it well enough in my undergrad to commit to graduate school just to follow that path towards being a counselor.
Hey, that's great. Teachers don't get enough credit. Sometimes there's just one teacher in our history that can profoundly affect our future. I'm glad to hear that. What prompted you after this teacher to go on with your undergraduate and your graduate license? I know your license is very near to being prompted. Uh, what 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 qualified you or interested you in the particular interests that are yours?
So back, and this is going way back, I was a student aide for the special education classrooms, and that is where I kind of got started with some of the helping field work. So, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, some other developmental conditions. I got to work with those at a young age. I got to see the people that did that for a living. Again, really great teachers at the school, and
Mm.
that kind of sparked the interest. And then in research that I've reviewed, a lot of literature that I've read through, um, they've both just stuck out as really complex conditions that, in a lot of ways, are underrepresented in care that's being provided. And I wanted to kind of just try and fill some of that kind of gap in the provider market of just trying to be someone that's willing to listen and hear and be helpful for some conditions that really do get misunderstood both by the general public and by some providers as well.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's such a needed passion to help students that have unusual complications in education as well as experience. In what period of time in your life did you particularly experience the most anxiety?
I will definitely go with graduate school for the highest anxiety period of my life by far.
I've had several counselors tell me that the same thing happened in grad school. Anxiety was the highest degree that they had to really work at anxiety. You
Yeah.
mentioned how isolating anxiety can be. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. On really like a biological level, when anxiety is high, the sympathetic nervous system's activated and we have that fight or flight mode. And something that happens when we're feeling fight or flight is that we kind of forget about the other people around us. It's a very physically isolating experience. It's our survival, our needs. And mentally, when we're feeling really activated, it's hard to picture other people kind of feeling the same way. It's kind of like this spotlight effect of I'm feeling this, nobody else possibly can be, so I can't reach out because they wouldn't get it. So physically, right, our body is kind of priming ourselves to be isolated. Biologically, we're set to help our own survival. So if you got to rely on yourself, You stop looking for other people. That way, you know you're 100% there. You're the only person that's going to 100% be there. So you rely on yourself when that fight or flight's going. And then that kind of difficulty viewing other people as understanding also leads to that isolation.
Gosh, I really understand that myself. When you were under that kind of anxiety, did you reach out to others that were suffering the same kind of anxiety, or did you tend to isolate yourself?
I think it may have turned more to commiserating at times than kind of support. But my fellow colleagues, peers, other students, when I was going through my program, my coworkers at the sites I was at were always great people to talk to when stress was higher, anxiety was higher, because they had been through it for sure. As you mentioned, grad school is, I don't know if there's anybody that's ever been to school in general that hasn't had some level of anxiety about it, but especially working in this field, kind of putting a lot of yourself out there to take care of others makes it a little harder to take care of yourself at times. So, yeah, really important to reach out to people that are in the same shoes. In my case, the colleagues are literally like in the same shoes, basically.
After graduate school, when you're working with clients, do you find yourself needing to set appropriate boundaries so that you're taking care of yourself, not just taking care of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I advocate for anyone working any job, not just like healthcare, mental health care. If you aren't kind of putting your oxygen mask on first on the plane, then you can't really be helping anybody else. So if you aren't on top of things for yourself, if you aren't taking time for yourself, if you aren't disconnecting, then not only are you doing yourself a disservice, but you're doing your clients a disservice because you're not able to be fully present for them if you're just kind of running yourself ragged.
That's so wise of you to know that at your relatively young age, to have learned that lesson really well. What other lessons did you learn during that time of anxiety that are still important to you now?
The biggest one is kind of things do get better, right? Stress is something that doesn't go away, but it's not always going to be as intense. Sometimes things spike again, right? But overall, you get better dealing with things. Life gets not necessarily easier, but sometimes a little more kind of clear in what you need to do, how you need to do it. So yeah, things get better is the biggest lesson I definitely learned, especially getting through grad school, not a fun time.
Okay, okay. Anxiety sometimes feels like a moral failure to some of us. Like I really have a lot to be grateful for, so I shouldn't be anxious about anything. How do you address that common self judgment?
A lot of that is going to be reframing work. And I work primarily from like the cognitive behavioral side of things. So it's looking at where might that thought be coming from? Usually with judgment, right? It's not coming from ourselves. There's an outside source, whether that's our friends, family, our school, peers, coworkers, society at large, versus figuring out, okay, this may be your voice, but whose words are these? When it's, I shouldn't be anxious, where's that should coming from? And then looking at the facts of the case of, okay, is there a reason to be anxious? Usually, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's stressful. So it's not that you're just anxious. It's there are things that are anxiety provoking in your life and you're feeling anxiety because of that. It's not just that you should be grateful. You can have good things and recognize that there's also bad things going on.
Yes.
I hate the mental image of we look for the silver lining in a cloud because that's trying to make a bad thing better. We're looking for the sun behind the clouds because the good and the bad both exist at the same time. We got to be able to look at both of them. You can be grateful and you can be anxious.
I love that. I love that offering. You mentioned self compassion as an antidote to anxiety. How do you describe how you give yourself compassion?
I think self-care is a big way. If we
Okay.
want to feel like we're worth taking care of, the easiest way to do that is by taking care of ourselves. It kind of goes in line with that reframing of how are we currently kind of operating? If we're treating ourselves poorly because we're anxious, then that's contributing to the judgment. We're just going to feel worse. versus if we're saying, hey, you might have a bit of anxiety right here. Is there anything I can do to feel better? Whether it's, again, working out is great, nice tea, just doing hobbies I enjoy, food I like, just some way of showing that, hey, things are fine. You're able to take care of yourself. You'll be positive. And that's something, again, I really preach for clients too. It's just where are the steps you can take to show that you care for yourself by doing things that prove that.
I like your answers to anxiety, that you've learned the hard lessons and some really great wisdom for yourself and your clients. I highly recommend that our listeners read your entire article in Authority Magazine with many great tips. How can the viewers contact you?
So I don't personally have a social media presence currently. If you're in Pennsylvania and you need counseling, you can book me through the Macon Wellness services there. Other than that, reach out to the Macon Wellness social media. On Instagram, they have a lot of stuff that they post that's similar to this. A lot of tips for dealing with anxiety, depression, other mental health difficulties. So I'll pop up on there from time to time.
Thank you so much. Again, that's Macon Wellness, making with a G at the end,
Without the G, just Makin.
Makin wellness.com. And thank you again for Alex for joining me this morning. And I'll be sending you a copy of this video, and you'll be able to use it in any way that you can. And I also will add a link underneath the video so that people that watch this video will also go to Authority Magazine and read the entire article. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. It was a pleasure to see you.